So today's the 18th of Sivan, and it's actually the yortzeit of my father-in-law, alav shalom, and the yortzeit of a little boy who I knew in South Africa many years ago, who passed away at the age of 11, and it's his yortzeit today. His name is Elisha ben Rachel, and my father-in-law's name is Shmuel ben Mendel. So I want to dedicate the class to both of them, that the neshama should have an aliyah, and the neshama of Elisha ben Rachel should have peace and comfort. And my husband was telling very cute stories about my father-in-law. He was a really interesting person, had a career in the army, in the Russian army, part of the army that helped to liberate Romania, became a captain in the Russian army, and he had a graduating class of about 500, I think. And at the end of the war, I think there were 3 people left alive.
Wow.
Fighting against the Nazis. So he did a lot of amazing things. I'll just share one story. Yeah, a lot of amazing things. He was a very compassionate person, had great muzzle, and his neshama should have an aliyah. So being the 18th of Sivan, the Hayom Yom for today is actually a nice tie-in with the beginning of the Parsha. So the Hayom Yom this is the actual time of the footsteps of Mashiach. So that's not the Hayom Yom, that's just the introduction, but the Rebbe was saying that this is the actual time of the footsteps of Mashiach. So when I was in Crown Heights, there were all these different imagery around the Mashiach's coming and his arrival, and there's the footsteps of the Mashiach, and then the Rebbe said, the Mashiach is already here, he's kind of standing at the door. Then there were all these analogies that we just have to shine the buttons on the clothing of the Mashiach, that he's ready. It's just, shine up the buttons. But now a lot of people would say that we are already in messianic times, and we're already in, like if we were imagining that from the beginning of time, we were waiting for this shift to happen when things would radically transform. So we are already in that shift of things turning upside down, inside out, things becoming possible that weren't possible before. So it's just interesting when the Rebbe put this together, he wrote here, we are in the actual time of the footsteps of Mashiach. I think now the Rebbe might say it's not just the footsteps of, but, already, I don't know what comes after footsteps of, the entry of, presence of. It is therefore imperative for every Jew to seek his fellow's welfare, whether old or young, to inspire the other to teshuva, so that he will not fall out, chas v'shalom, of the community of Israel, who will shortly be privileged with God's help to experience complete redemption. So, in other words, Mashiach is coming, and you don't want anyone to be left out of all the fun. So if somebody doesn't do tshuva and they're not identified with the klal, with the group, with the tribe, if their deeds are such that they alienated from their own soul and their own connection with Hashem and the Jewish people, then the experience of this shift and the revelation of Mashiach is going to be different. So the Rebbe is kind of pleading with us, please get everyone on board. It's no time to waste. Get everybody on board. So, okay. So let's start. I actually was going to only share the screen for later parts, but let's share the screen already for the beginning of the Parsha, because that's also inspiring. And so we start off, and the Parsha's Behala'aloscha, and that was for Susan. She always likes me to
Yes, thank you.
To say the name of the Parsha, and we'll see how that name of the Parsha is in the second line of the Parsha. V'yarabeh Hashem el Moshe le'mo, and Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Diber el Aaron, speak to Aaron, va'amarta elav, and say to him, Behala'aloscha, when you raise up, when you light up, when you raise up et hanerot, the lights, el mul pnei hamenorah, that are opposite, that are el mul pnei hamenorah, yeru'u shivat hanerot. The 7 lamps shall cast their light towards the face of the menorah. So there's a lot of interesting things we can say about this. So the first thing is to say that in the previous Parsha, we had a whole repetition of all the different princes of all the different tribes bringing offerings to the Mishkan. And Aaron was feeling a little left out, like all these tribes are making all these offerings, and what am I doing? And just to go back to last week's Parsha, and in terms of all the offerings, it's very interesting because it's one of the longest Parshas of the whole year, and we didn't spend any time on this last week, but each of the tribes has a prince, and each of the tribes' princes brings an offering. And part of all these offerings were part of the inauguration of the Mishkan. And the first tribe is just going back, was Nachshon ben Aminadav. He's the guy that when the sea was going to split, when the Jewish people were coming out of Egypt, they knew they had to cross the sea, and everybody was nervous. What shall we do? It looks like the sea is in our way. Do we turn around? Do we go back? Are we committing suicide going into the water? And Nachshon was the one who said, no, let's trust God. I'm sure there's, God's going to save us. And he went right into the water, and it says he walked into the water till the water was up to his nostrils, and then the water split. And that was the beginning of the splitting of the Red Sea. So he's a guy who likes to take initiative. He's from the tribe of Yehuda. And let me just share with you what his offering was. 1 silver bowl, its weight 130 shekel. 1 basin of silver, its weight 70 shekel in the sacred shekel. Both of them filled with fine flour, mixed with oil for a meal offering. 1 ladle of gold, its weight 10 shekel, filled with incense. 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 sheep in its first year for an olah offering. 1 he-goat for a sin offering, and for the sacrifice of the peace offering, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 sheep in their first year. And this was the offering of Nachshon ben Aminadav. And then you think that the Parsha could just say, and a prince from every tribe made the exact same offering. But it doesn't. Every single tribe, it goes through and repeats word for word what that tribe offered. And there's a lot of things to say about it, but it's interesting that even though all the 12 tribes offered exactly the same thing, so one thing about it is one tribe didn't try to better another tribe. And the other thing is that even though they offered the exact same thing, they offered it in a different way, because each of the tribes had a kind of distinctive persona and personality. And it's like saying, even though we daven every day, today's davening is different than yesterday's davening. So we didn't speak about that last week. But then Aaron was sort of saying, well, I'm feeling a little outshadowed here. They all gave all these offerings, and, what about me? And then Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron that he's going to be responsible for lighting up the menorah. That is tremendously important. In fact, that's even more important than, and that's one of the most important things. So we've got this lighting up of the lamps of the menorah, and then there's 7 lamps shall cast their light towards the face of the menorah. So there's a lot of things to say about that. Let's just see. I'm going to show Rashi's commentary. So here, so first of all, I just said that he felt distressed, that he didn't join in, and then they tell him, don't worry, your offering is greater than that. And now this thing of when you light, you need to cause the light to kind of stand up by itself. And that's this second Rashi here. And there's a lot of teachings on that. It's a very special teaching also for Chabad, because Chabad is involved in reaching out and trying to inspire, people to connect with their soul and to connect with Torah and to connect with the Jewish people. And if we look at our Hayom Yom, we were basically told that everybody should try and inspire everybody else. We are in the business of inspiring other people. So how do you inspire? So when we're looking at this commandment of Aaron lighting the lamps of the menorah, in your mind, you can understand that this is, oh, and I left my notebook in my other room, so I'm going to have to go get it, that Aaron is not just lighting the menorah, but he's lighting up the souls, so to speak, of all the Jewish people. And he's lighting up the souls of all the Jewish people, and he's in a way giving us, and Hashem, in the way Hashem is telling him to light up the lamps, he's giving him a hint of how we're supposed to try to inspire other people. So I'm going to go get my notes, and I'm going to come right back because I have all my books here, but not my notebook. And I want you to try and answer the question of what's the hint of what are we supposed to learn from the way Aaron needs to light the menorah in terms of our own efforts to not only inspire ourselves, but inspire others. I'm coming right back with my notebook.
Hey, Yaakova?
Yeah.
You gonna come up north and come spend Shabbos with us? Will you pick a day in?
Well, in a few weeks, I'm going to be in Bear Mountain, but I would love to. Yeah.
Oh, it's already that close, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I have to work that week, so I'm not able. I'll probably come at night just to say hi to everybody.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We'll do it another time when you can get away.
That would be great. That'd be great.
And then we'll invite a whole bunch of wonderful people to join us.
Sounds good.
Invite me too, Susan.
It's like a party.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who said
So
that?
I think while I was away, nobody was doing their homework. I missed out on some social arrangements.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, anybody have any ideas? Anyone have any ideas in terms of the homework story? See, anybody have? I see somebody's there. Who's there? Was waving at me.
Esty.
Who is there?
Esty.
Oh, Esty. Hi, Esty. Okay. All right. So King Shlomo says the lamp of God is the soul of man. The lamp of God is the soul of man. So this lamp, which is really the menorah that's in the temple, is analogous compared to the souls of the people. So as Aaron is lighting those lamps, and this is an interesting thing, that everything that happened in the time that the Yidden were in the Midbar, everything that they were doing, all of these actions that they were doing, they were practical actions and they have symbolic impact and symbolic meaning. So Aaron is lighting up these lamps. And the idea that while he's doing that, he's literally lighting up the lamps of all the people that are in that environment. Last week, I think we were talking about this holy congregation that is being enveloped in a atmosphere of protection from the cloud, and God's, dealing with them in a very specific way. And so this lighting up of the lamps is an arousal to each and every member of the group that they should be ignited in some way. And then Rashi says, you should Behala'aloscha, that's the name of the parsha, you should cause it to ascend, which means that you have to, if you're lighting up a lantern or a lamp, you have to light it and you have to keep your match there until the wick catches, and that that light is fully lit. And if you take your match away, that light is going to continue to burn well. And then ideally from that light, you can light other lights. So it has to be independently lit. So now, if I ask you, what does that mean in terms of us trying to inspire other people and inspiring ourselves? What does it actually mean?
To do something to have the spark for somebody to give somebody maybe your fire or your spark. So hopefully that will encourage them.
And keep lighting their spark until the spark is fully lit. Like, don't just, sometimes with the lighter, you kind of click it and the lighter goes on, but then it goes off again, and you have to keep clicking it, and you haven't quite lit your candle. You have to keep clicking your light until that candle catches and is fully lit. So in terms of inspiring another person, you have to kind of keep working at it and yourself until the wick is fully lit, until the point that you could walk away and that person is still what? Still
Inspired.
Lit.
Inspired, lit, inspired. And then a candle that's fully lit has the capacity to what?
Light others.
Yeah, but without being diminished. That's the cool part.
Right, without being diminished. So that's kind of in this week's parsha. So he's igniting the souls of the Jewish people when he's doing this. And the idea of a flame being like a soul, it's constantly, reaching upwards. And then this idea of the 7 lamps, and the 7 lamps turning to the middle. So all the wicks would sort of turn to the central shaft of the menorah. So there's an interesting thing about the 7 lamps. What does the number 7 bring up in your memory, consciousness? Something about the number 7. What does it
Completion.
of or suggest or something?
I mean, whatever. I said it wrong. You know what I mean.
The 7 days of creation, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
So you mean the Shabbos?
Shabbos, 7 days of the week, and then the 7th day. What else?
Isn't there like the Shemitah year or something?
Yes, the 7th year is the Shemitah year.
Completion.
That's not the right answer. You could tell by your.
I
Yeah.
know.
Well, I'm not saying it's the wrong answer, but it's not the one I'm looking
Not
for.
quite the one she's looking for.
Yeah.
Not
So
Shemitah,
I'll give you
it's
another
not
hint.
Shabbos. It has nothing to do with Shabbos.
I'll give you another hint.
Shemitah.
We're lighting up the souls of the Jewish people, and there's 7 candles. We're lighting up the souls of the Jewish people, and there's 7 separate characters.
Seven characteristics.
Thank you. Yes.
I
Seven
will tell you, I kind of cheated because I went to Hannah's class on
Yes. Well, that's good. It's good.
That's
It's
not
not called
cheating, it's
cheating.
good.
It's not called cheating. That's called preparing. Preparing. Okay. So each of the 7 is in a way that the people are divided up, so to speak. And I also actually listened to some of Hannah's class, that some of the people are people whose personas are kind of defined by chesed. That's their nature. They get lit up in ways that respond to that. Some of the people are gevura, more gevura type. Some of the people are more tiferet type. Some of the people are more netzach types or hod types. So each of these different types of people are getting lit up. And then in the idea that everything is connecting to the center, there's a beautiful teaching about that connecting to the center, connecting to the, let me just see how it was written over here, because it's very special also. Sorry, I'm just looking in my chumash here. Central. So connecting to the essence, to the panemius of this work, like directing it to the core in a way. So, okay. And then Aaron did everything that Hashem asked him to do. And then the Chumash tells us again about this incredible reality about the menorah, that it all came from one piece of gold. And the menorah had a miraculous element to it, that Moshe was trying to figure out, how do I make this menorah? Because Hashem told him it all has to be from one piece of gold. So Hashem showed him a vision of the menorah. And in fact, we had a couple here, it says, there was a block of gold weighing a talent, and he pounded it with a hammer, and he cut it with a chisel, and he didn't put it piece to piece. But how did he know how to do it? So Rashi tells us, according to the design he had shown him on Mount Sinai. And then again, there's 2 times when Moshe is involved in trying to construct this Mishkan, when Moshe doesn't really know how to do something. It seems way too complicated. And then Hashem says, well, just start, just like with the beams, just put your hand on the beam and I'll do the rest. And then they just put their hand on the beam, and then Hashem kind of picked up all the beams and erected all the beams. And the same here, that although they were told to make it, Hashem basically said, you just put the piece of gold in the fire and I'll kind of take care of it. And so they did it afterwards. Maybe they hammered out the details, but Hashem really helped them in creating this menorah. So there was something about the menorah that was
Bracha,
yeah,
I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but you just said before how Hashem showed him on Har Sinai. How exactly did he show him?
So he showed
A
him
video? I'm just kidding, I don't mean to.
No, it's a great question, and thank you for asking it. I think that he showed him in like a holographical vision of some sort, like he conjured up some kind.
Right.
And I want
That makes
to
sense.
talk about this a little more, because I already shared with you this idea, and I'm going to share it again with myself and with you, because it's just really astounding. that when Moshe went up to Har Sinai and he was there for 40 days, he wasn't there like we are, body, bones, flesh. In a way, I learned this from someone, I've forgotten who, but a beautiful Perush on the Torah that was asking, why couldn't Moshe come down earlier, and avoid this whole mistake with the golden calf? He could have just cut his trip short. It looks like the Yidden are going to make a mistake. Let's bring you down early. And so the answer was no. Moshe had to go through a whole process of dematerializing from his physical way of being and becoming much more dematerialized, so that when he encountered Hashem, he was much more of like to like. So there could be an exchange of energy, of information. Right. And then when he needed to come down to share that with us, he had to rematerialize. And that was a process that takes a baby 40 weeks to get born. There's something in 40, when we go into the mikveh, there's 40 seah in the mikveh. So the water is a transformative space made up of 40 seah. And I think in the flood, there was something also in the mabul of 40. So for this process to complete itself. So while he was in his state of being dematerialized, I guess there was a way that information could pass from Hashem to Moshe in a way that is, like if you watch any videos of near-death experiences, you see how information is communicated in a very instant, graphic way, but people are in a very spiritual form, but there's learning and communication of very clear concepts. So I think it's in that realm.
Rach, I remember you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it. Someone else did. That when he was there for those days, he didn't eat.
That he didn't eat and he didn't
have a human body.
Right. Right. So that I couldn't really understand it. Now it's a little more clear that he was in a transformed state totally. Okay, so then the next part of the Parsha is very interesting. We won't read it inside, so I'll stop the share for a little bit. There's the inauguration of all the Levites, or the installation of the Levites. And the Levites were going to replace the firstborns, because the firstborns were involved in the sin of the golden calf. But Hashem needed like a large group of people to help in the different duties around the Mishkan and to assist the Kohanim as well. So they enlisted the Leviim, and the Leviim had to be purified. And there was a purification process with water spilling on them, water mixed with ashes of the red heifer, the red cow, a cow with completely only red hair. And you know that religious Christians right now are trying to cultivate red heifer cows so that when Mashiach comes, they should be available for purification rites when the temple will be destroyed. And this is a serious business. They have farms and they look for red cows. And when they find one, they get very excited, and it's a real thing. So they needed a red heifer. The Levium would need to be purified.
So who's doing this? Who's doing that right now?
Religious Christians.
That's what I thought you said. So what, they're doing it for us? They think that they're gonna
yes,
their way
doing it for us. I mean, there might be some Jews trying to do it too.
No, it sounds amazing, but I know, so they believe the MS, and they think, oh, good, when Mashiach comes, at least we're going to be selling them, and we're like that part of the
schus
experience, right? Wow, well, that's an interesting thing that you found out? Where did you hear that? I shouldn't ask
I
you.
heard it a long time ago. I don't remember if it's only religious Christians. It might be some Jews too, but I do remember. And I remember reading it like a long time ago, so I can't give you a source.
Only because I never heard you say it before. That's all. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, back on.
Might
what
be
was
that
that?
Temple Institute also, or some people, although
Yeah.
you're about in the like in Texas and in Arkansas or whatever that they're trying to do this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's people like committed to it. So the reason is
Wow.
if anyone had been, you know, that in Torah philosophy or Torah worldview, anything alive is holy and anything dead is unholy. So if a person had interaction with a dead body or a relative that needed to be buried or anything like that, then they would be spiritually needing this kind of not cleansing, but restoration to a state of what we call purity, but purity is maybe not the best word, tahara in Hebrew. So in order for the Levium to be inaugurated or installed, that installation, they would need to have this process with the ashes from the red heifer, some water, different sprinklings. They had to have all their hair removed, then immerse their garments in a mikveh, offer young bull, some grain offering, flour and oil, and a scent offering, a sin offering. And then the Levites would atone for all of Israel, and all of Israel would lay their hands on the Levium. I'm not sure what this looked like, if everyone, all the Bnei Israel would be part of this inauguration with the laying of hands on the Levium. And then this is very interesting. Aaron would lift up, and I'm only going into this in detail because it's so interesting that in order for these Levium to be inaugurated into their service, there were three main clans. There were the clans of the ones from Bnei Kahat, there was Bnei Gershon, and there was Bnei Merari. And Aaron had to go through each member of the Kahat clan and pick them up one at a time and kind of like wave them around and put them down, and then pick them up, wave and down, and pick up, wave. And it says he went through the whole clan of the Kahat. And then it says, and the Kahat clan were the most holy. They would carry the most holy objects. They would put them in the wagons, and when they had to go from place to place, they would carry the most holy objects. And then the next tribe was the next group was the Bnei Gershon, and they would carry the holy objects, not the most holy, but a little bit less holy. And then the Merari would be the least holy, but still part of the Mishkan. And each group, Aaron would pick up, wave, and that's part of how they would officiate. And only from 25 to 50 were they officially working in the temple around all these tasks. And for 5 years, they would be trained. And then, so from 30 to 50, they would be actually working. And then after 50, they could continue to open and close the gates, play in the choir, musical instruments, sing in the choir, carry just the lighter objects, but they weren't able to do like the real heavy duty service. So I just thought that I would mention that because that's also in the Pasha. Next part. So another amazing thing, and I've told you this before, but sometimes when I'm talking to my grandson, I'll say to him, you know, there's a Harry Potter moment in Chumash or in Torah. And a Harry Potter moment is like something that's very magical and very crazy. And here it is in the Torah. And, you know, and I think it's very cool. So the Torah is now going to talk about in this Parsha how the Yidden knew when they should travel and when they should camp. And it's really graphic. The Torah tells us in very, very graphic terms that what happened was there was a cloud of glory, and it was hovering over the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and it would hover over the tabernacle. And then when it was time to travel, that cloud of glory would shift, and it would move from being on top of the Mishkan, and it would travel, and it would spread itself out over the whole tribe of Yehuda, because they were the tribe that would always leave first and move. And it would spread over the tribe of Yehuda. And then when they started leaving and moving, then and there's a whole thing that they would blow trumpets. And Hashem told Moshe to construct for himself 2 trumpets. And only Moshe would use these trumpets. And after Moshe, before he passed away, he was told that he had to sort of hide the trumpets and put them away. No one else could use them. But when they were supposed to leave and start going traveling, Moshe, they would blow these trumpets. I'm not sure if Moshe, the Kohanim, I think, would blow these trumpets. And Moshe would proclaim, "Arise, O God, may your enemies be scattered, and may those who hate you flee from you." Well, he didn't say it in English. He said it in Hebrew for sure. But then the cloud would change into a pillar and go in front of everyone and lead them, and they would follow the cloud. And then when it was time for them to stop traveling, the cloud would go back over the tribe of Yehuda and arc itself up into the shape of a hut. And then they would know that they needed to stop traveling. Then they would stop traveling, and then the cloud would go hover over the Mishkan. And then they would stay. Now, there's a very interesting thing about this traveling and stopping and starting and coming and going, because it keeps saying that as they did this, they all listened to Hashem. It says, that they did it as Hashem told them. They did it as Hashem told them. They did it as Hashem told them. And it's very interesting that they did it as Hashem told them here. So according to the word of Hashem would the Bnei Israel journey, and according to the words of Hashem would they encamp. And then it goes through a whole process of how all this happened, the cloud and everything. And then it repeated many times. According to the word of Hashem would they journey, and according to the words of Hashem would they camp. It's very interesting, because sometimes they camp just for a night or 2 nights. Sometimes they camped for up to 19 years. And they never knew when they were going to stay or when they were going to go. But it keeps repeating, according to the word of Hashem, then they would journey. According to the word of Hashem, then they would stop. So what do you think we could learn from that? Not a hat, a hut. Like
I'm sorry.
Yeah, a hut, not a hat, a hut. I know I have a funny accent, but I meant to say hut, not hat. But it's kind of a similar shape, but no, hut, not hat.
The cloud was in the shape of that?
Like, yes, when they needed to camp again, then it went into the shape of a hut.
Like a sucker.
So it was telling them to be domesticated, because a hut is showing domestication.
Yes, exactly.
So you
Like
add
this-
And then when they were journeying, it was in the shape of a pillar. And then when they camped, it was over the Mishkan. And then when it was ready for them to move again, it went over Yehuda
Yehuda.
in some kind of shape. But when they had to stop, in a hut.
Oh.
So that was the way Hashem communicated. I think it's so interesting.
So
This
you
like transforming cloud.
You
giving
kind of,
instruction. So what do you think about this thing about all the time it says according to when Hashem said, and according to when Hashem said, and according to when Hashem said?
It all has to do with bitachon. You don't know what you're doing, and you sort of have to just wait and count on Hashem that it's going to be good in the right time.
Right.
also that we have an intuition that we connect and ask. You have to ask Hashem, please guide me. That if you listen quietly to your heart and you listen quietly, you can get the answers when to do this, when not to, when to start, when to stop, whether to put your energy into this or not, or go here or not go there. That, you know, we can still listen for that today.
I love that
Yeah.
answer. I
Yeah,
love that
Mhm.
answer.
Yeah, it's very
my
good.
answer like goes to the garbage, right?
No,
Susan, that was so nice. It was so beautiful.
you know what? Sorry, it's not like an evaluation. This answer's good and this one's better, best. It's like they all good answers. And I think your answer was beautiful and valid, and Susan's answer was beautiful and valid. In fact, I think they both equally pertinent, because the one is responding with bitachon and emunah to the outside instruction. And Susan's answer is saying that really the outside instruction can be experienced inside. And I
Right.
think that they both go very well together. They're both very, very good answers together.
It's
So,
true. I think like with everything, right? Everything that's external, like bitachon, then Susan, is that like something that you always think about things
Just in the last
experienced internally?
have I felt more intuitive and trusted that inner voice and ask, like, you know, to literally ask. It's a relatively new thing. Also,
you'll be happy to know that the theme of my retreat for 5783 is prophecy and intuition. That is going to be the theme of the retreat this year.
I'm so looking
Because,
forward.
I feel like that's really the topic of the moment, which is interesting because there's another piece in this week's Parsha that's going to be all about that. So I actually, Susan, that was a very nice segue into this part that I wanted to talk about next. So what happens next? Because there's so many things to talk about in the Parsha. So what happens next is that the people really do themselves out. They go all out in their moaning and their groaning. And my husband, we used to make jokes about Rabbi Mona and Rabbi Grona. we actually have some friends who called the Gronas, and their father was a big rabbi, and then it's kind of Rabbi Mona and Rabbi Grona. But anyway,
That's funny.
the Yidden tested Hashem many, many times. We know that Hashem tests the Yidden, and he gave Abraham 10 tests, and we know that through every test that God gave to Abraham was able to bring more of his strength to bear, and he got more connected to his powers of his soul. But it says that the Yidden tested God, and this is now going to be the 9th out of 10 tests. And this is what I had originally wanted to share, but I want to go through it a little bit more quickly. But okay, so you know what? We're going to share it anyway. Let's share it anyway, because it's kind of interesting, just to the extent of their moaning and their groaning. And you're kind of like almost embarrassed of them, because they behave so badly, these Yidden. They moaning and groaning incessantly, and it's a lot of moaning and groaning. So here we are, chapter 11, and it says, the people were looking to complain, and it was evil in the ears of Hashem, and Hashem heard, and he got angry, and there was some punishments, and there was that moaning. But that's not even the one I'm going to talk about. Then they started having strong cravings. What does it mean, strong cravings? And they began to cry, and they said, who's going to give us meat to eat. We want to eat meat. And they started saying, we don't have any meat. And Rashi tells us, and the Meforshim tell us, they had plenty of meat. They had plenty of cows, they had animals. In fact, they had so many animals that Reuven, when they were crossing into the land of Israel, some of the tribes want to stay on the other side of the Jordan because they say, we have so many flocks and we have so many cattle, we need place to graze our cattle. So why are they saying that they don't have meat? And then they say, we remember the fish that we ate in Egypt free of charge, the cucumbers, the watermelons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. And now our bodies are dried out because there's nothing for us except manna. That's it. We just got man, and we're bored, and we don't like it. So the first thing is that the Meforshim say, what do you mean in Egypt you ate fish free of charge? First of all, you were slaves. You didn't even get straw for your bricks. I mean, you were living a terrible life. You were embittered. Your lives were hard. What do you mean? So then the Meforshim say, well, they didn't have mitzvahs. And their life, even though it was physically hard, they weren't obligated on mitzvot. And then Rashi even says, not only that, but the mitzvahs around the laws of family purity. Like once they got the Torah, there's certain laws of when you can be with your husband, when you can't be with your husband, like certain laws against relationships. They started to feel like we were free in Egypt. Now we got all these restrictions. That's one thing. Then they say we don't have cucumbers, watermelons, leeks, onions, and garlic. And Rashi says that the man could taste like anything you want.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If the man could taste like anything, what were they missing?
But not those things. And the reason why, does anybody remember why not those things?
You mean the fish, the watermelon, the leeks, and the onions, they couldn't taste like those things?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So
No.
Rashi tells us that cucumbers, leeks, onions, and garlic are not good taste for nursing infants, that it gives them gas and makes them uncomfortable. So the mothers shouldn't have the taste of that because it would bother their nursing babies, and they shouldn't even see other people eating those things. So they didn't have, so in other words, it's like in sensitivity to the vegetarians amongst us, we're not going to have any meat on the table. So in sensitivity to the nursing mothers who can't eat gas producing food, we're just going to take that, out of the menu. So they complaining. And then Hashem says, but the manna is like coriander seed. Its appearance was like crystal. And it says they ground it in a mill or crushed it in a mortar or cooked it. It's what Rashi says, not exactly that. It would have the taste as if it was ground or crushed or cooked. It can taste anything you want. And it would be beautifully packaged, so it wouldn't get destroyed. It was like vacuum sealed in man, top and bottom. It had beautiful packaging. So what are you complaining about? It says Hashem became angry and Moshe also got very upset. Now look at this debate between Moshe and Hashem. It's amazing. Does somebody want to read Pasuk 11, even in English? Yeah,
Moses said to the
Sandra, you're
got it.
going in? You're going in?
Yeah, Moses said to the Lord, why have you treated your servant so badly? Why have I not found favor in your eyes that you place the burden of this entire people upon me?
Now read the next one.
Did I conceive this entire people? Did I give birth to them, that you say to me, carry them in your bosom as the nurse carries the suckling to the land you promised their forefathers? A question.
I mean, Moshe is like, excuse me, did I ask for this job? I mean, these people are driving me mad as well as you mad, right? And I'm also kind of getting a little burdened by all of this. Yaakova, do you want to carry on reading? 13.
Sure. Where can I get meat to give all these people? For they are crying on me, saying, give us meat to eat. Alone I cannot carry this entire people, for it is too hard for me. If this is the way you treat me, please kill me if I have found favor in your eyes, so that I not see my misfortune.
Okay, so this is very interesting. So the Meforshim say that what he's saying is, kill me so that I don't have to see you punishing these people, because I don't want to see that either, because I know you're really angry with them. So the next part is really, really interesting. And it's interesting in terms of our theme for the retreat of prophecy and intuition. And it's interesting for a lot of reasons. So Hashem says to Moshe, assemble for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the people's elders and officers. In other words, in Egypt, they were officers and elders, and they kind of earned the people's respect. And take them to the tent of meeting, and then they shall stand there with you. And I will come down and speak with you there, and I will increase the spirit. So, Asher elecha, v'samti elecha, v'nasu itcha b'maseh ha'am. So let me see. V'sham v'atzalti min haruach. I'm going to take from the ruach, the spirit that is with you, and I'm going to spread it over these 70 other people. They're going to become prophets together with you, and then they're going to bear the burden of the people with you, so that you don't have to be doing all this alone.
This is what Yisro told them to do a few partials back.
Yes, but this was, he said you should have people sharing the burden of judgment. But now this is almost different. This is like a prophetic capacity that they'll all have. And it says, and so he's going to, number one, he says, I'm going to give you 70 elders who are going to be prophets. But then he also says, but if they want meat, I'm going to give them meat, right? You saying who's going to give us meat, and it was so much better in Egypt and all of that. So I'm going to give you meat, not for 1 day, not for 2 days, not for 5 days, not for 10 days, not even for 20 days. You're going to get meat for a month. You're going to have so much meat, it's going to be coming out of your nostrils. It's going to make you sick. You're going to it's just going to be meat. And because Moshe even says, if we slaughtered all of our meat and if we gathered all of the fish from the sea, it's not going to be enough for them. So Hashem says, you think I'm limited? I'll bring you, all this meat. And then there's this piece about Hashem descending in a cloud and speaking to him and increase some of the spirit that was on him and put it on the 70 elders. So let's see. Vayared Hashem ba'anan. Hashem came down in a cloud. V'yeraber elav, and he spoke to him. V'yotzel min haruach asher elav v'yitain al shivim ish. He took the ruach and he spread it on all of them. Now, this is very interesting. There were 2 men in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the second was Medad. Okay, so let me just give you a little background. I know we're getting to the end, but the way Moshe did it is that he took 72 papers, and he only wrote, will be a prophet on 70 papers, and he handed them all out. And if you got the paper, he went to each tribe and gave it to special people, and then they kind of gathered. And there were 2 people, Eldad and Medad, who didn't think that they were on the level to actually be part of the 70. So they didn't join the group. They sort of thought like, who are we? We just simple people. And so they didn't join with all the group, and they didn't go, but then they started prophesizing. They stayed away and they started prophesizing. And then somebody came up to Moshe and said, Eldad and Medad are prophesizing. And it actually says that, what did they prophesize? They prophesied that Moshe wouldn't lead the Yidden into Israel, and Yehoshua would actually lead them into Israel. And so he comes up to Moshe and he says, Yehoshua actually says, Moshe, they're saying all these prophets. We should put them in jail. And I love this answer. Does somebody want to read it? 29. Susan, can you read it? Are you still there? 29.
Moses said to him, "Are you zealous for my sake?" Oh, I'm sorry, Susan. I didn't know you were still there. I'm sorry.
No, it's too small. I'm on my phone and I
Oh,
can't
okay. All right. Sandra's going to read it for you.
go for
Moses said
it.
to him, "Are you zealous for my sake? If only all the Lord's peoples were prophets, that the Lord would bestow his spirit upon them."
If only all the Lord's people were prophets. Don't worry about me. Don't feel like because they're prophesizing and they're prophesizing my demise, that I'm like politics in 2023, I'm going to put them in jail. If they're prophesizing my demise and that I'm not going to lead the people into Israel, that's fine. Don't worry about me. I love the
beautiful.
fact that they're prophesizing. I want everyone in the
Abundance,
nation to be
right?
Prophets.
Abundance.
Sorry?
Abundance. There's enough to go around for everybody.
Exactly. Let them be an abundance of prophecy. So I thought that was interesting. Unfortunately, the story has not such a great ending because the birds, the quails come in, and there's certain people who just grabbing and eating, and the place gets named Kivrot Hataiva, which means the sort of the graves of those who had so much appetite, because they were just eating, and they kind of they were punished, those who went and grabbed the food. But there's a lot about this that I love, about the spreading of the prophecy, and Moshe speaking to Hashem, saying, I need help. And Eldad and Medad didn't join the group, but somehow the spreading of the prophecy included them because they were chosen. And even though they didn't officially join the group, they received this prophetic spilling out of this amazing thing. And then the last thing in the Parsha, it's too important to skip. I'll just try to say it in just a few minutes. So when all these prophets became prophets, I think Moshe's wife, Zipporah, said something like, well, I feel sorry for them now, because if they're all going to become prophets, maybe their wives are going to be upset because they'll separate from their wives. And I think she said that to Miriam. And then Miriam kind of, I'm sort of ad-libbing a little bit. And Miriam's like, well, that's not necessarily true. Aaron and Miriam, we prophets, and we don't separate from our spouses. We able to get prophecy and not separate from our spouses. I mean, I don't see why Moshe had to, separate from you. That doesn't seem right. And she's kind of kibitzing with, and then later, or at that moment, she's talking to Aaron, and she's saying, I don't know why Moshe had to separate from his wife, even maybe divorce her because he's a prophet. I mean, that doesn't seem necessary. And then the way it's written in the Chumash, it's almost like Hashem says, excuse me, can you two please come meet me in my office? I want to have words with you. And it's like Hashem calls Miriam and Aaron, and they actually can't talk to him because they're not in a state of purity. They have to quickly go to the mikveh in order to they'll like, well, hang on, we got to go to the mikveh. We'll be there as soon as we can. And then they go and they meet Hashem, and Hashem is talking to them, and he says, I want you to get one thing straight, my young people. The way I talk to you is completely different than the way I talk to Moshe. The way I talk to Moshe, we're so close. You can't even begin to imagine. I think he uses the word almost mouth to mouth. We We
Bestie.
totally bonded. The level of your prophecy is in a completely different category. So don't think that you could pass judgment on my servant, because you can't. And then it says that the cloud comes down, and when the cloud goes away, Miriam has leprosy. She's got saras. And Moshe was there, but he wasn't exactly. There was a part where Hashem was talking in private to Miriam and Aaron, and then Moshe sees what happens to Miriam, and this is very beautiful, and I just learned this now, and I want to credit Chana Bracha with this little piece. So Moshe knows that if somebody has saras, they have to go out of the camp and really be put into quarantine, and we all know about that. And so Moshe does a very short prayer for Miriam, like asking Hashem to please not punish her, and to heal her right away. And I'm going to read out the prayer, and I'm going to ask you where you know this prayer from. And then I'm going to tell you where we say this very often. Elna Rafana La. Elna Rafana La. Which means Elna Rafana La, which means please heal her now. Does anybody recognize that? Elna Rafana La?
It's not hala. It sounds
No, I
like
thought
I'm
the same thing.
I'm gonna put it in a tune, and then you're gonna
Mhm.
recognize it. Na 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 na. Elna Rafana.
Either nefesh.
It's in Yedid Nefesh. And
Wow.
the prayer that Moshe prayed for Miriam to be healed, but she still had to go for a week into quarantine for speaking Lashon Hara about her brother. But there is that Chana Bracha says that is the shortest prayer, and it's something that we can really use for ourselves. Please, Hashem, heal her now. Ana elna rafana na 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 na.
Where did you say it was from again, Susan?
What?
Where is it from again?
It's from Chana Bracha. Chana Bracha Spiegelbaum. You know, she has
Right. No, I know. I want to know where the prayer.
Oh,
Where?
Yidid Nefesh. It's the song
Okay.
that we sing before Shabbos or on Suda Shlishi at the end of Shabbos. It's one of the verses. And so even though Moshe prayed for her, she still had to go for a week to contemplate the fact that one shouldn't get into other people's business and talk about other people's relationships, because we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. And Lashon Hara is not a good thing. But also, by the way, there's 6 things that we're supposed to remember. That's called the 6 remembrances. Supposed to remember certain things all the time. And one of those 6 remembrances is remember what happened to Miriam when she spoke Lashon Hara about her brother Moshe. So don't speak Lashon Hara, because even Miriam, as holy as she was, and we know she was really a holy person, she had to be quarantined for this
Oh, she must be so
story.
embarrassed, so much shame. I wonder what the experience was like. Will she be able to be above that?
I just don't understand why.
Say your question again.
I wonder what it was like for her. Did she feel tremendous embarrassment, shame, and busha, or was she above all that?
I think that's just an interesting question, because when we think of all of these punishments, we have to appreciate that they were tikkunim. So maybe she understood that in going through what she went through, she she did the necessary, and when she came back, maybe she was good to go because she
Right.
understood that she was like doing the rectification that needed to be done. And so if we interpret all of the punishments in Chumash as rectifications rather than punishments, in a way,
Our definition of punishment, but not, yeah.
it's
Cool.
we think it's punishment, but maybe it's rectification. Like maybe she was off alignment. It's like if you go to the chiropractor and he adjusts you, is he punishing you or he's bringing you back into alignment? You know, you don't have to feel guilty if you're out of alignment. You went out of alignment and then he puts you back in alignment. So
It's a very good way of explaining it. Thank you.
thank you. I think guilt is a kind of lower level emotion.
Right.
Like I think if you think about us living in a building and there's the basement and first floor, second floor, third floor, and then there's penthouse and rooftop, you know, ways of perceiving things. I think guilt probably more of a basement, you know, first level emotion. Whereas I think the higher you go, you understand you went off track, you correct yourself, you do what needs to be done. And then, you know, I'm not sure. I'm sure someone could write the story and write it that she felt a lot of shame, but I think if you connect it in a high way and you trust and you kind of go and you let things clean and move, and maybe you're not going to feel that, you know, shame seems like a dense emotion rather than like, yeah, it's just my way of thinking about it. I think when we into shame, we go down. When we into correction, we go
That
up.
was great. But why couldn't Moshe tell Tzipporah what was going on? I mean, I mean, she was his wife. I mean, she was, you know, with him and
Through thick and thin. Yes.
You know, I mean, so
that is a good question, and I don't have an answer for that. And maybe she, you know, I have to tell you that, like, there's sometimes the big rabbis and, you know, couples that are helping the world. And then if you ask their kids if they're so happy with it, they're not. Or sometimes the family members pay a price. And maybe Moshe was doing something with Hashem that was very unique, and he had to be kind of on duty 24/7. But maybe it really was difficult for Tzipporah, and that was her sacrifice. If she mentioned it and she was complaining about it the way it seemed to be in the Midrash that I read, maybe it wasn't so easy for her.
yeah, I mean, she was actually sad. I mean, she sounded, you know, pretty different.
Well, if she said, I feel sorry for the wives of all those new prophets.
Right. I mean, what would you think that meant? I mean,
yeah, but Miriam could have said, well, you know, I don't know. She could have said, well, it's not my business to comment.
Right, but I think she was trying to, you know, be empathetic towards her. And,
yes,
you know,
probably all of that is true.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we are moving into a different space and time, and I think people are, how do I say this? I think that we've learned that in the time of Mashiach, there's going to be more prophets, and that people are going to be more connected to their capacity to tune in to, like Susan said, the still small voice. And that's part of the process we're in now. And so, you know,
Rachel, why wouldn't we even need prophets when Mashiach is, we don't really have the Yetzer Hara anymore, and we have a clearer connection without prophets. The job of a prophet is to educate the people from what Hashem's needs are, what Hashem's message is to us. But I'm not saying it's going to be magical, but I wouldn't think.
Well, that's a great question. Maybe we're not going to need prophets to do the pointing of the finger and saying, you need to do tshuva. Maybe the way in which Hashem is going to be revealing himself is that we're all going to be hearing that still small voice. And it's not going to be prophets as in reprimanding others, which is what prophets have been doing in the past. It's like Hashem telling the prophets, you go and you talk to the people and get them back on track. Maybe it'll be prophets in that everybody will be connected to their own inner sense of prophetic connection or prophetic understanding, or the veils or the separation between us and Hashem will be less, and we'll be more in an intimate conversation in a way that is reminiscent of the prophets. Maybe. But it's a good question, because in the past the prophets were reprimanding and giving those kind of messages. But there has to be a way that we transition from where we are now to being more tuned. So, some people say intuition is a form of prophecy. I don't know, Karen, what do you think about all this? I'd like to hear your comments, if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I was texting Bracha, quietly when she was talking.
I knew you had something to say on this topic.
No, I was just let me close the door. I was texting, because you were saying about, it's even further than the footsteps of Mashiach, right? So I started thinking, and right away I stopped, because there's just so much going on, in the world, that we are at a different vibrational level. I don't know how to say it any differently, but sometimes how you are around certain people, and you're around them and you're like, I love it, I'm getting closer to this person, I'm feeling even better connected. And now we're almost at a time where we are so sensitive to all the the vibration that's around us, that we just absolutely necessarily listening to the truth of your body and what it's telling you, so even though so many times our heads can be played with, and there's also that whole thing going on that a lot of people don't understand, but there's a sensitivity now that I think wasn't even there before. And I think that those people that are a little bit more sensitive and attuned to that, it's the roof has just been ripped off. That's what it seems like to me. It's so strange.
With the smoke when you went out, the whole world, or at least the East Coast, had this haze of darkness. It was still 9/11. It was
so scary, right?
It was
so scary. And so global, it just felt like nature altering. It felt
I felt that
apocalyptic.
Yellow gold haze.
That's a good word.
Apocalyptic.
Yes,
it really, really did. And it's not the first time I felt.
Yeah, so that's what I said. I said, right now we're really, I'm telling you, and I don't know anything, except a little bit about this stuff, but if you have to have faith, this is the time right now to listen to that voice, that inner voice, you were saying, that little voice, listen to that, because it's so clear, and I'm jumping from one foot to the other. I'm oh my gosh, every time you see something and you see, even if something bad happens, you're wow, we are literally, so many steps closer to where we are going. And it's just, I don't know, I'm very excited.
Really? Because I think we're so many steps further, especially what's going on.
It's a parallel process. So as we're going forward, in order for new things to become apparent, for new structures to be born, for new realities to become manifest, old realities have to crumble and start to reveal their faults and their hypocrisies and their vulnerabilities. And so there's a simultaneous process of certain things kind of crumbling. It's like a seed in the ground. And a seed can't grow the sprout until the outside of the seed starts falling apart. So what we're seeing in the world is a lot of falling apart. which is going to allow for new things to become manifest. But change can't come from a very solid and established and intact system. You can't go from like a very resilient and tough caterpillar into a butterfly without a shmush stage.
Mhm.
You need a shmush stage for things to transform. Because if you take a caterpillar and you try to stretch it into a butterfly, it's not going to happen. So the caterpillar has to kind of go into the cocoon and start dissolving and getting all smushy. And while it's doing that, everybody's thinking, oh my God, the world is just before my very eyes disintegrating. It's so terrible. It's so bad. It's so dark. Everything's falling apart. But if you see that as part of transformation, that in order for transformation to take place, old things have to,
Right.
the deficiencies of the old have to become very apparent. The hypocrisies of the old have to become very apparent. The emptiness of the old has to become very apparent. Then that can kind of shrivel up and sort of start disintegrating. And in that, in the debris of that, new things start to sprout. So you're not going to get newness just flying in, you know, like on golden wings, and it's just coming. There has to be, it's like a compost heap. There has to be degeneration and falling apart of old things. And you certainly see huge changes of the way we do things, the way things are, the way information is being shared, the way we can get connected, the way we can defy time and space, how we can connect to people at the other end of the world. There's so many things that are breaking down the separateness and the old ways of being and new ways coming on board. That's like, whoa, there's a lot going on.
But so now what about the opposite, where the old way of, yes, a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and now you've got this whole movement, and it's just boggles the mind, or you know, this whole, you know, critical race theory where every white person should feel guilty. Like, how did that manifest?
So it's about the fact that definitions are being re-evaluated, and everything's being re-evaluated. And if you think about gender, for one thing in specific, we know that in the time of Mashiach, there's going to be a very, like, let's go to an old metaphor that when the world was created, there was the sun and the moon, and they were equally big.
Right.
And the moon said, there can't be two of us.
Two
So
kings.
Hashem said, okay, you go small, and you go small, and you know, the sun will be big. And it says at the end of time, the moon is going to kind of become big again. So feminine consciousness and the idea of malchut, there's perfected feminist consciousness in a good way, and then there's the underbelly and the dark side of all this reconfiguration. So there's the place where it opens to new ways, and instead of like a, you know, certain oppression of woman or woman's values, or when we talk about malchus, we talk about reality from the bottom up. We talk about things coming from an embodied body consciousness, you know, bottom up, and then we talk about things from the top down. So maybe in the future, instead of so much top down, there will be bottom up. That's not necessarily bad, but the way it plays out is that gender, what's feminine, what's masculine, it all gets like, it's all in the mix of like confusion, but it doesn't mean, you know, anyway, I see people need to go, so we'll talk about this more at another time. But thank you to everyone for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, it was
Bracha.
great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good
Good night,
night.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, good night, good night.